Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. This is Spirit Matters, your daily spiritual check-in with Bhakti Center. My name is Dal Gurunga, and I'm so glad that you are here. Coming at you live from Brooklyn with my live Zoom studio audience tuning in, and wherever you are, thank you for being here. Really, really appreciate you a ton. And we're reading from the Bhagavad Gita. Yesterday, we were reading from the 4th chapter, and we're going to keep on rolling. According to Kimberly, we were reading chapter 4, verses 16, 17, and 18. Is that right? Okay. All right, let's just go ahead and get right into it today. No preamble, no pregame fluff. Just gonna dive into it. Some of you are like, oh, thank God. Text 19. So we've been talking about the idea of karma, which literally means action. It's always interesting in spiritual life when you unpack the meaning of words, specifically because in spiritual philosophy, spiritual life, in a spiritual context, words have deeply implicated meanings, deeply implicit meanings where there are a variety of things that are important to understand in context. In order to understand one word, one concept, there are various other words and concepts that are required to kind of go together. So when we look at the idea of action, of karma, sometimes we think of karma being, what goes around comes around, and every action has an opposite reaction. And the law of, we sometimes think of it as the law of reaction, but actually it's just karma means action. But implicit within that is the idea of reaction. When I act onto the world, what consequence does that have? And spiritual life is a lot about understanding the consequences of our actions, of our thoughts, of the fact that we do not excuse me, cough. We do this live, by the way, everybody. We do not edit anything out. We just roll with it. That we do not exist in a vacuum. That we do not exist in a vacuum. I think that's part of the sensitivity of spiritual life. I was listening to a beautiful class by a friend of mine who was speaking in person at the Bhakti Center a few weeks ago. And they were talking about the sensitivity of the heart of a Vaishnava, or the sensitivity of the heart of a Bhakti yogi, or the sensitivity of the heart of a spiritualist. And that sensitivity is that although we have various rules and regulations and paths and prescriptions and recommendations and all the things that we're supposed to do to lead a good spiritual life, at the end of the day, spiritual life and life in general is about relationships, and relationships require a sensitivity to be in tune with an individual and presence. And so I think that sometimes we get kind of caught up and just think that the spiritual life is a series of just kind of rules and actions and behaviors and things that we do. But actually, we get principles, and then all of it just becomes, all of it we have to find ways to apply very sensitively in our dealings and relationships with ourselves and other people. And so recognizing that I don't exist in a vacuum, and that I do have impact on the people around me, and caring, just starting to care about the way that I affect and impact other people. You don't even necessarily have to like make drastic changes in your life right away, or let that like throw you off completely, but just like, do I really care about the way that I act and behave around? And it's interesting when you look at, I'm going to look them all up right now because I know I can rattle a few of them off, but sometimes listing them off, especially when you got a microphone in front of you and you're in front of the people, you forget things. But the yamas and the niyamas, for example, by Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras. And so really when you look at all of the yamas and the niyamas of the Eightfold Yoga system, so many of them deal with the sensitivity of how we relate to others. So ahimsa, not harming or being violent towards other people in thought, word, and deeds. Satya, truthfulness, being honest with other people and not lying, not being deceitful, not being duplicitous. And so recognizing that my words have power. Asteya, not stealing, right? Recognizing that not everything belongs to me and that it's not my place to just take something just because I want it. We have this idea, even just like of land. One of my favorite singer-songwriters, Tracy Chapman, one beautiful song that she wrote. She's a beautiful singer and a beautiful songwriter, and I love her music on a musical level. But then also she speaks about very thoughtful topics, and her lyrics are very meaningful. And she has this one song called "Paper and Ink," which is about money and possessiveness. Money's only paper, only ink. We'll destroy ourselves if we don't agree. Who owns the earth? Who owns the sea? You know, she has these questions that she asks in the song. Who owns the earth? Who owns the sea? And I'm gonna look that up right now. Paper and Ink, Tracy Chapman. Such a beautiful song. Lyrics. Let's look it up. Money's only paper, only ink. We'll destroy ourselves if we can't agree how the world turns. Who made the sun? Who owns the sea? The world we know will fall piece by piece. So this idea of that, like, who owns the sea? Who owns the earth? Who really owns the things that we think that we own, right? And so the idea of like land, like this land belongs to me now. It's like, well, who determined that this land belonged to you in the first place, right? And so this concept of ownership is that like, oh, I think this belongs to me. That means that it doesn't belong to you, and I have a right to it over and above you. And it's a lacking of sensitivity that like, well, no, we're here in this together. We're sharing this earth. We're sharing this air. We're sharing time. Brahmacharya, celibacy, or sometimes people call it the right use of energy, or being conscious of our sexual energies and not just seeing other people as objects of my sexual enjoyment. Parigraha, non-greed or non-hoarding. All of these things ultimately have to do with how we relate to the world around us and to other people, and recognizing that I'm not the center of existence. And in so doing that, we get access to an experience of life that is much higher and greater and more peaceful. So this sensitivity, karma meaning action, but then recognizing that my actions have implications in how I affect the world around me. And therefore, action also refers to reaction. And so it becomes very, very important to understand how my actions implicate me in reactions. So it's a little tangent about the yamas and the niyamas, and then about the idea of karma, which is being brought up in the Bhagavad Gita. And then he has the idea of third chapter is called Karma Yoga. The fourth chapter is called Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of intelligence, of understanding things on a higher level, enlightened action. Enlightened action. And so in text 19, which is where we are in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker, a karmi, someone who's performing karma, a worker, for whom the reactions of that work. So you're doing karma, you're doing action, but the reactions that we just talked about being implicated in have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. So we remove ourselves from the implications of actions, not by abstaining from karma, from work, but by elevating the way in which we look at our work and look at the things that we do. Commentary to this verse goes as follows. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness, so a spiritually minded individual. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, meaning that, like, again, me in the center, that I'm the one that everything is meant to flow towards. It is to be understood that they have burned up the reactions of their work by perfect knowledge of their constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are actually learned who have attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Supreme is compared to fire. Such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to work. So what we're really taking away here is this idea of removing ourselves from the center. Spiritual life is a continuous revelation, understanding, acceptance, and embracing of the fact that I'm not the center. And when you look at a lot of these principles of the yamas, the idea of asteya, not stealing, aparigraha, not over collecting or hoarding, the idea is like everything doesn't revolve around me. Everything doesn't belong to me. Everything doesn't have to flow towards me. I'm not in the center. And if you don't have a spiritual foundation, that can just be scary or silly because it can feel like chaos. But spiritual life is not just a denial of the false ego, it's an embracing of the real ego. It's not just removing myself from the center and there's no center. It's realizing that I remove myself from the center and I revolve around and serve the real center, which is higher self, which is higher power, which the Bhagavad Gita refers to as Krishna. But spiritual traditions around the world refer to a variety of names and nomenclatures and sound vibrations to refer to that one supreme absolute truth. And when we can come to the place where my activities in life are not serving the narrative of my personal false ego that I've placed in the center of existence, and I'm trying to recruit everyone around me to play the supporting cast of the movie of my life, when I can free myself from the burden of that whole song and dance scenario, and I can start to put Krishna in the center, and my actions are meant to bring me to a place of realizing that I'm not the center. So much of service in spiritual life is simply to try to rewire the system of the mind and the heart that I'm not the center. I'm not the center. I'm not the center. When something goes wrong in our life, what's really painful? What's painful about it is that it's a hard revelation that, you know what? I'm not the center. I'm not the center. As long as I think I'm the center and trying to put myself in the center, this becomes more and more painful. As long as I recognize that I'm not the center, that God is in the center, and that I'm meant to learn how to relinquish my false ego in order to embrace my true ego, which Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here in the commentary. The constitutional position as the das, as the eternal servitor of that supreme person. Jivara Swarupa Hoy Krishna Nitya Das, the eternal constitutional position. What do we mean by constitutional position? Meaning the foundational, eternal, non-changing. I have so many non-constitutional position. By non-constitutional, I don't mean according to the Constitution of the United States of America. What I mean is foundational, true, real. Non-constitutional means things that are always changing. I'm a New Yorker. I'm young. I'm wealthy. I'm poor. I'm educated or uneducated. I'm employed. How many people's constant position of employment changed over the pandemic? How many people's relationship status changed? I'm a parent. I'm not a parent. All of these different things that we get anxiety about, it's constantly changing. But our constitutional position, our real everlasting, the true nature of who we are, is that of, and we don't like this word, of a loving servant of that supreme. And the Sanskrit word is das. Jiveta swarupa hoy. Jiva, the spirit soul, swarup, that constitutional position, your actual being. Nityera, nitya, eternal. Jiveta swarupa hoy, nityera Krishna das. It's the word das, which means in loving servitorship. And the idea of servitorship can sound quite unappealing. But when service becomes the expression of love, when you think about what is the nature of the soul, is Sat Chit Ananda. That Ananda is a byproduct of love. And love is expressed through service. That's why bhakti is defined as devotional service. And we're always serving something. And so the question becomes, when I am able to direct that service not towards the idea of me being in the center, but the idea of higher power being in the center, of God being in the center, of Krishna being in the center. So it's an experiment. It's a little tool we can use. When life doesn't go our way, we can just simply look and see, you know what? One of the reasons why this hurts so much is because I'm clinging on to the idea that I'm in the center. I'm clinging on to the idea that things revolve around me. I'm clinging on to the idea that everyone around me is supposed to play a supporting role in the movie of my life that I've created for myself. Trying to serve these non-constitutional positions about myself that are going to change anyways. And if at the very least they change all of them, the system resets itself at the time of death. And so what I can do is I can embrace when things seem to not be going my way. Actually, they're not going my false ego way. They're not going the way of these movie characters I've created for myself, the star of my own show. It is going the way of my true self. It's not going the way for my fault. It's not going my false ego's way. It really is going my true self's way. And it just feels painful because I'm so attached to the things. It's so enmeshed in there that to kind of I bought some clothes in India, and Indian stickers are quite a phenomenon in life. I don't know if you've ever experienced Indian stickers. Like if you buy something like a pot or a piece of clothing, the stickers, they have like this soup, like they I think it's like alien technology glue that like it's so adhesive. It's incredible. It like does not come off. And so I bought this clothes, and when the clothes are dry, it peels off a little bit, but then I made a mistake, and I washed the clothes, and I hand washed it. It was in India in a bucket, and then I air dried it, and the sticker just became like part of the fabric. And I tried to peel it off, and it was like you're trying to peel off the sticker, and and it ends up just like taking off threads of the fabric, and just like the sticker and the fabric just kind of like meshed into one, and it was hard to like peel one away from the other. That's what it's like when we're trying to move our false ego. It's not like, oh, just like shave off like you're peeling a potato. You just shave off that layer of false ego. It's like it's so enmeshed that when I try to remove it, it's painful, because it feels like I'm ripping off pieces of my real self, which you're not. You've just allowed it to get so enmeshed, baked in the sun over so long that we've lost the line of separation. But the reality is that nothing can hurt the true self. Material circumstances, there is no spiritual FOMO. There is no missing out in spiritual life. There is no spiritual failure. There is no being left behind. There is no being left out. It's there waiting for you. It's your eternal, I'll say birthright, but the soul is never born. We know that. But to use the word itself, it's your eternal birthright. And there's more than you can ever imagine. Siri's asking me for birthday. I don't know, probably didn't hear that because of my microphone, but I said something in my phone. All of a sudden started speaking to me, and she's like, "This is the origin of the word birthright." And I'm like, that's not what I'm asking for. Anyways, back on track. And so this realization, such a beautiful commentary of Srila Prabhupada about recognizing who we really are. Knowledge frees ourselves from the misery of what it feels like when we think things aren't going our way. And knowledge frees ourselves from getting entangled of getting lost in the endeavor of trying to keep ourselves in the center and all of the burden that goes along with this. So much of life, when we just look around, is just people everywhere just trying to shovel themselves in the center or shovel the extensions of themselves into the center. My kids, my job, my house, my family, my country, my sports team, just shoveling our stuff into the center. Okay, that's what I got today. Love you guys. Kimberly, what are we taking away?
Takeaways. Spiritual life requires a sensitivity within relationships. Elevate the way work is performed. All the things we have anxiety about are constantly changing and not constitutional. It's not going it's not going in our false ego's way, it's going in our true ego's way. And we are not in the center of existence. We revolve around higher love.
Beautiful. I think that's the one. Things are actually going my way. That's what I'm walking away with. Things are really going my way. How are things? Everything's going my way. Really? Yeah, things are going my way. It doesn't feel like that. Doesn't feel like that at all. Feels like everything's falling apart. But really, that's just because my false ego is experiencing extraordinary death and neglect. And the sticker of my false ego that has been baked onto the cloth of my soul is being slowly chipped away. But it really means that everything's actually going my way. And to lean into that and believe that when I feel insecure, when I feel left out, when I feel anxious, when I feel restless, when I feel the need to control, when I feel all of the things, just to be able to lean back and be like, you know what? I can let some of that go and just remind myself that things may not be going my false ego's way. That's for sure. And the false ego will never be satisfied enough. Things will never go enough the way of my false ego because it's a lie. It's a fabrication. But things can really go the way of my true self. And I have to believe that. And I believe that for you, believe that for me, believe that for all of us. I love you guys a lot. Love you guys tons. Super grateful for you. Thank you all so much for being here. Today's Wednesday, so we got 2 more days left this week, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, same place. If you want to join our live Zoom audience, write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Okay, guys, appreciate you tons. Take care. Bye-bye.